Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Bohl. I'm a senior Middle East North Africa analyst here with RANE. Excuse my clock. We live in an older house here, and I'm here with our senior Europe analyst Adriano Bossoni, and we're going to be talking about RANE Network's 2023 forecast, the major geopolitical events and trends that we expect to unfold, and how we expect them to unfold for the coming year. So, Adriano, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, nice talking with you, Ryan. We were talking backstage. This is the first time that we do one of these together, so it's nice to finally share a Facebook Live with you.
Yeah, it's very exciting that we do a little cross collaboration here between MENA and Europe from time to time as well.
So this is a fascinating annual forecast, I would say, because this is one of those very unique years in which we can definitely see overarching themes and topics. Every year, and you and I, Ryan, we've been working on annual forecasts for a number of years now. Every year, it's kind of difficult to try to find common themes, common topics across the entire world, because here at RANE, we cover every corner of the earth. But in 2023, we will definitely see a series of very clear events and trends that will pretty much impact the entire planet. One of those trends is this will be another year of war in Ukraine. Our forecast is that there will not be a ceasefire, let alone a peace treaty in 2023, because the Russians and the Ukrainians, they still think they can extract more concessions from the other and make more gains on the ground before actually sitting on the negotiating table. Then another common theme will be, this will be another year of high inflation, and central banks around the world keeping or even hiking interest rates in order to fight inflation, which will have a negative impact on economic activities. So we will see very low growth and in some cases even recessions. That's in the global north. In the global south, we will probably see energy crisis, food crisis, sovereign debt defaults, everything connected to the combination of high inflation, high interest rates, and overall slowing economy. So as I said before, it's super interesting to us as geopolitical analysts to see that there are these common threats across the world and how they impact every region in a specific way.
Yeah, and one of our top forecasts is just about this emergence of this multipolar world in which multilateral institutions like the World Trade Organization become less relevant as countries seek out their own interests and try to develop comparative advantages, whether that's military or economic comparative advantages against one another, and means that the rules-based order that so many people's assumptions were built on continues to be eroded through this year as part of that wider trend that we've been seeing, that we, at RANE have been tracking for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Another of the big overarching themes that I was mentioning before is the rise of protectionism. We will see the three biggest economies in the world, the United States, the European Union, and China, all implementing their own measures to protect their domestic industries, to protect their domestic workers, to shield themselves from competition from the rest at a time of significant global uncertainty. So this will have a negative impact on what you were saying, Ryan, on multilateralism, global cooperation, global integration. This will be a year in which the trend will actually move in the opposite direction. We will see some aspects, I don't want to exaggerate here, but some aspects of de-globalization, which is to me a super interesting development that will have an impact in 2023 and beyond. So that's another big one. And then regarding the regions, what's the outlook for the Middle East and North Africa, which is the region that you particularly focus on?
Right. So, like, one of the biggest things we've been focusing on for years is the progress towards an Iranian nuclear deal. And in 2023, we're not very optimistic that we'll see much progress there. With Iran now supplying the Russians with arms in Ukraine, with Iran in the midst of a crackdown against popular dissent at home, the West simply isn't really in a mood to negotiate and provide the concessions that a hardline regime like Iran wants to see. So we expect to see continued Iranian nuclear development. They'll be doing advances. Israel will escalate its covert program of assassinations and occasional strikes within Iran itself to try to degrade that nuclear program. And there's always a risk that that spirals out of control. And while we don't see conflict scenario as being the most likely thing, we certainly do keep it as a potential scenario as we monitor how this kind of fallen apart nuclear talks progress.
Wow, that's super interesting. And regarding Europe, which is the area that I primarily focus on, we will see it's going to be a tough year. Energy supplies are going to remain tight and expensive. As I said before, economic activity will slow down, but it will happen at a time when labor markets are also relatively tight. So we will see unions and other groups like pushing for higher wages, which could also trigger wage-related inflation. So it's going to be a very interesting year in Europe, in which, on the one hand, economic activity is slowing down, but the labor market is still strong. So workers feel encouraged to ask for higher wages, which could in turn contribute to inflation. So it's going to be a super interesting year to watch the European Union. And against this background, as I said before, we will see a more protectionist Europe. We will see the EU allowing member states to protect certain sectors of their economies. We will see the European Union increasing oversight of foreign investment, especially, but not only, from China. We will see the European Union allowing its member states to maybe spend a bit more. They will reform their rules on fiscal deficits and debt so that member states can spend their way out of the economic crisis. So it will be a year of a more present European state, if you like, but also national governments increasing their protection of the economy. So that's another big trend that we are tracking. Of course, people are interested in Ukraine. Ryan, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on the evolution of the war.
Well, just contextualize that we have a Christmas ceasefire, and I would put that in quotes right now.
Yeah.
And this sort of ceasefires in quotes is really what our baseline forecast is continued intermittent fighting with two sides who militarily have trouble making advances against one another. And that will likely be the pattern through the rest of the year. And we're not expecting things like a Russian domestic uprising that would significantly alter Moscow's calculus. And we're not expecting the West to abandon Ukraine either, which would force Kyiv into making substantial concessions. And as long as some of those factors remain in place, we're looking at a stalemated fight in which small parts of territory are traded back and forth as the war continues to grind on for the year. Yeah,
exactly. And the final topic that I think we should discuss before ending this Facebook Live is something that our clients ask us a lot about, which is the competition between the United States and China, especially when it comes to technology. We will see not only a continuation, but potentially an intensification of that competition as the United States reaches out to its main partners like South Korea, Japan, the Netherlands, to try to restrict their exports of crucial technology like semiconductors, but not only to China. And also the United States willing to go it alone. If they can't get enough support because their partners are a bit reluctant to irritating China too much, the United States will be willing to do even more to try to curtail China's access to technology. And I insist, semiconductors will be the key battleground, but it will expand over time to other areas like artificial intelligence and quantum computing and so on and so forth. So there's no end in sight for that war, technological war between the United States and China, which will also force China to become more self-sufficient and heavily push to develop its own domestic internal capabilities to deal with this isolation that the United States is trying to create. So yeah, that's another thing that we get a lot of questions from. And speaking of questions, Ryan, I have one for you. If you are watching this live and you said, well, these two guys are kind of interesting, I want to read more from them, where can they find our 2023 annual forecast in particular, but our coverage on global affairs in general?
So you can find it on our website at RANE Worldview, and I believe I always have to check the URL for this, but it's well, it just popped up right there. There we go. So RANE Worldview, RANEnetwork.com. Worldview is our product that you can subscribe to and read our annual forecasts and get an idea of what we're thinking for 2023. I'm not sure, Adriana, we did just have one question that popped up about
Oh, really? Yeah.
and I'd like to see if we can have a chance to address it. Do you guys see a new global reserve currency appearing in 2023? And I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that. I have some
that's a great question. We actually published a story about this. I think it was today or maybe yesterday. And the short answer is no. The long answer is that China in particular, they will push really, really heavy to increase the internationalization of their currency, the renminbi, but they are very, very far from turning it into a global reserve currency because of internal limitations, because of their internal regulations, because of the way that the Chinese markets work, because of their own financial sector, which is very modest, because of their own internal market, which is still very modest in that regard. So no. And then we will see other countries like India, but it's in a much, much earlier stage, trying to kind of do something similar. But the answer is no. The US dollar will remain by far the main reserve currency, which gives the US that little extra leverage when it comes to issues like sanctions or pressuring other countries. So it's a big leverage. It's a big advantage when you control the core global currency.
Right. And I mean, as we see the multipolar world unfold over the next decade, the idea of alternative global reserve currencies will become more viable, but it's a slow process. The US dollar is still very dominant. And we know that investors don't necessarily like to take a risk on currencies that might come from governments that manipulate them here and there. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. Otherwise, I would encourage everyone to please check out our website at RANEnetwork.com. RANE Worldview, again, that is the product where you can find our 2023 forecasts. And we hope to see you guys again.